Shalom, guys. Welcome back to our portion studies. Today we start the new cycle of the Torah portions, the Parashat, and we're going to start off in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, all the way through Genesis chapter 6. And by the way, did you know that the actual meaning of Genesis, or the actual book of Genesis, is actually called Bereshit, which means in the beginning? So that's what we're going to be studying today. Bereshit, in the beginning. So starting from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 says like this. In the beginning, or Bereshit, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God caused there to be a separation between the light and between the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. So we see here, we are starting off the new cycle, the new portion studies with the beginning, with Bereshit, the beginning of the entire world, how God started everything. And we see how God's already making separations between darkness and light. He's making separations, we'll see later on how he makes separations between the land and the sea, the sky and the earth. But we see the separation that God's already making. The main one that I want to see right now is this darkness and the light. How the darkness cannot mix with the light cannot mix with the darkness. There has to be a separation in between the two, because we cannot mix light with darkness. We already see God doing this even from the beginning of the entire universe, right? So we see him creating the heavens and the earth in this portion. Let's continue reading, and I'll read a commentary that I have here. Verse 6, and God said, "Let there be a vaulted dome in the midst of the waters, and let it cause separation between the waters." So God made the vaulted dome, and he caused a separation between the waters which were under the vaulted dome, and between the waters which were over the vaulted dome. And it was so. And God called the vaulted dome heaven, and there was evening, and there was morning a second day. And God said, "Let the waters under heaven be gathered to one place, and let the dry ground appear." And it was so. And God called the dry ground earth, and he called the collection of the waters sea. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth produce green plants that will bear seed, fruit trees bearing fruit, in which there is seed according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth green plants bearing seed according to its kind, and trees bearing fruit in which there was seed according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning a third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vaulted dome of heaven, to separate day from night." Again, we see the separation of light and darkness. "And let there be signs as in appointed times for days and years. And they shall be as lights in the vaulted dome of heaven, to give light and on the earth." So real quick, let's go ahead and highlight verse 14, because we see something important here that's happening. It says, God said, "Let there be lights in the vaulted dome of heaven to separate day from night." But most importantly, it says, "And let them be as signs and for appointed times and for days and years." From the beginning of the earth, from the beginning of creation, we already see God making the separation between the heavens and the earth, but there's also the lights in the skies for appointed times. It says for days, for years, right? So from the beginning of time, we already see God working in his instruction, which was going to come in the future for the Israelites, was going to come for the future for the people of Israel, right? The appointed times that we should follow. Passover, Sabbath, Sukkot, all these other feasts that we've celebrated, Yom Kippur, all these other feasts, all these appointed times, the beginning of the month, the beginning of the year, we see God already working it from the beginning of time. It says he created this specifically for the purpose of giving light, but also for signs and for appointed times. So if you want to go ahead and mark that down, verse 14, because it's an important verse for us to back up the way God had already created or had already pre-existed before the Torah was given to Israel. Verse 15 again, "And they shall be as lights in the vaulted dome of heaven to give light unto the earth." And it was so. Verse 16, "And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the smaller light to rule the night and the stars. And God placed them in the vaulted dome of heaven to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning a fourth day. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly over the earth across the face of the vaulted dome of heaven. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to their kind, and every bird with wings according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind, cattle and moving things, and wild animals according to their kind. And it was so. So God made wild animals according to their kind, and the cattle according to their kind, and every creeping thing of the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 26, and God said, let us make humankind in our image and according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of heaven, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every moving thing that moves upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image. In the likeness of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and the birds of heaven, and over every animal that moves upon the earth. The first commandment that we see from God to humankind is to be fruitful and to multiply and to fill the earth and to subdue it, right? To rule over the fish in the sea, over the heaven, over the birds of heaven, and over every animal that moves upon the earth. The first commandment we see is be fruitful and multiply. The purpose of there being male and there being female, the purpose of there being a husband and a wife, the purpose of this is to be fruitful and to multiply, to fill the earth. That was the purpose of God in marriage. That was the purpose of God in humankind. To make a male and to make a female is to be fruitful and to multiply. Okay? So that's the first commandment we see. Let's go on to verse 29. And God said, look, I am giving to you every plant that bears seed, which is on the face of the whole earth, and every kind of tree that bears fruit. They shall be yours as food, and to every kind of animal of the earth, and to every bird of heaven, and to everything that moves upon the earth in which there is life, I am giving every green plant as food. And it was so, and God saw that everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a sixth day. Okay, chapter 2 of Bereshit, verse 1, and heaven and earth and all their array were finished. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. And God blessed the seventh day, and he sanctified it, because on it he rested from all his work of creating that there was to do. Again, God sanctified, he separated, he blessed as the seventh day, right? So no matter whoever's telling you, oh, the seventh day, the Sabbath is no longer for us, the Sabbath is no longer for the people, right? Whoever's telling you that, whoever's saying that, they have no authority in saying that, because God has already blessed it. God has already established it. God has already sanctified it. We ourselves cannot say we're going to sanctify the seventh day. We cannot say we're going to bless the seventh day, because the seventh day, Shabbat, has already been sanctified from the beginning of time by God's own words, by God's own mouth. He sanctified it. He separated it. He blessed it. So no matter where you are, God has already blessed Shabbat, and it's been blessed from the beginning of creation. Okay, so very important for us to understand is Shabbat has been blessed, Shabbat has been sanctified, Shabbat has been separated from all the other days from the beginning of time. Verse 4, these are the generations of heaven and earth, and they were created. These are the generations of heaven and earth, and they were created in the day that Yahweh God made earth and heaven, before any plant of the field was on earth, and before any plant of the field had sprung up, because Yahweh had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was no human being to cultivate the ground. But a stream would rise from the earth and water to the whole face of the ground. When Yahweh formed the man of dust from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and that man became a living creature. Verse 8, and Yahweh planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And Yahweh caused to grow from the ground every tree that was pleasing to the sight and good for food. And the tree of life was in the midst of the garden, along with the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now a river flowed out from Eden that watered the garden, and from there it diverged and became 4 branches. The name of the first is Pishon, It went all the land. It went all around all the land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of the land is good. Bdellium and onyx stones are there. And the name of the second is Gihon. It went around all the land of Cush. And the name of the third is Tigris. It flows east of Assyria, and the fourth river is the Euphrates. And Yahweh took the man and set him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and to keep it. And Yahweh commanded the man, saying, From every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you shall eat from it you shall surely die. Then Yahweh said, It is not good that the man is alone. I will make for him a helper as his counterpart. And out of the ground Yahweh formed every beast of the field and every bird of the sky, and he brought each to the man to see what he would call it. And whatever the man called the living creature was its name. And the man gave names to every domesticated animal, and to the birds of heaven, and to all the wild animals. But for the man there was not found a helper as his counterpart. And Yahweh caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man. While he slept, he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh where it had been. And Yahweh fashioned the rib which he had taken from the man into a woman, and brought her to the man. And the man said, She is now bone of my bones, bone from my bones, and flesh from my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken from man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall cling to his wife, and they shall become one as one flesh. And the man and his wife, both of them, were naked, and they were not ashamed. So we see the purpose of man, again, being formed. We see how it elaborates a little bit on how when man was formed, what happened with man. God sent him a helper, or God formed him a helper, which is the woman. And then it said that, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall cling to his wife, and they shall be as one flesh. So we already see the commandments of them as man, as woman, as a wife, as a husband and wife, as one team. Their purpose is to help each other, but also to fill the land with children, to fill the land with their offspring, right? And we see the purpose of man here, right? God used him as a help in the creation of the world, in the creation of the animals, of the birds of the sky. He's the one who named them. He's the one who was tending to them. He's the one who was, going and taking care of the trees, of everything that God had created. There was a purpose for humankind to be here on earth. Okay, everything that God creates is for His glory. Everything that was formed was for His glory. Let's continue reading. Chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal which Yahweh had made. He said to the woman, Did God indeed say, You shall not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, Yahweh said, You shall not eat from it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, You shall not surely die, for Yahweh knows that on the day that you both eat from it, then your eyes will be opened, and you both shall be like gods, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was desirable to make one wise, then she took from its fruit, and she ate. And she gave it also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed together fig leaves, and they made for themselves coverings. Then they heard the sound of Yahweh walking in the garden, at the windy time of day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh among the trees of the garden. Then Yahweh called to the man and said to him, Where are you? And he replied, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid, because I am naked, so I hid myself. Then he asked, Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I forbade you to eat? And the man replied, The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave to me from the tree that I ate. Then Yahweh said to the woman, What is this you have done? And the woman said, The serpent deceived me, and I ate. Then Yahweh said to the serpent, Because you have done this, you will be cursed more than any domesticated animal, and more than any wild animal. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. And I will put hostility between you and between the woman, and between your offspring and between her offspring. And he will strike you on the head, and you will strike him on the heel. To the woman he said, I will greatly increase your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bear children, and to your husband shall be your desire, and he shall rule over you. And to Adam he said, because you listened to the voice of your wife, and you ate from the tree from which I forbade you to eat, which I forbade you to eat, the ground shall be cursed on your account. In pain you shall eat from it all the days of your life, and thorns and thistles shall sprout for you. And you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. By the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread, until you return to the ground. For from it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And the man named his wife Eve, because she was the mother of all life. And Yahweh made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin, and he clothed them. And Yahweh said, look, the man has become as one of us, to know good and evil. What if he stretches out his hand and takes also from the tree of life and eats and lives forever? And Yahweh sent him out from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. So he drove the man out and placed cherubim east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming turning sword to guard the way to the tree of life. So we see now the expulsion of man, of humankind from the Garden of Eden, right? They're expelled. What is this that we're seeing here? Because a lot of people who deny the Bible, a lot of people who deny that God exists, a lot of people who try to go and look in the Bible and say, oh, look, this flaw here. Oh, this doesn't mean this, right? All those people try to always look at the Word of God with their own mentality, with the mentality of a humankind, with the mentality of reason, of why is it that God is saying this and it doesn't make sense to me. That's why I don't believe it, right? So real quick, we see in chapter 3 how the serpent deceives Eve. And then Eve and Adam eat of the tree of knowledge and of good and evil, and they're expelled from the garden. Right? Real quick, let's go to verse. Let's see verse 3. Okay. Starting from verse 2, it says, "The woman said to the serpent, 'From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat.'" Right? Because the serpent says, is it true that you can't eat from any of the garden, right? From any tree, right? So it says, no, we can eat from any tree of the gardens, but verse 3, from the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, Yahweh said, you shall not eat from it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die, right? The moment you eat from it, you're going to die. So people will say, well, they didn't die. They were expelled from the garden, right? So God must be a liar. This must be false. The Bible doesn't make sense. I'm done with it. I don't want to believe it. But when you start looking at in the mentality of the Bible, of a perspective of the original time this was written, the original purpose, right? It starts making sense to the reader, right? Don't touch it. Don't eat from it, because the moment you touch it, the time you touch from it, or the time you eat from it, you're going to die. And we see this exactly happen. We see time and time again in the first couple chapters, the first couple books of the Torah, that mankind lived 900, 700, 800 years, many hundreds and hundreds of years, right? What caused them to die? What caused them to start dying? What caused their life expectancy to drop? Now we see people even making it to 60, 70 years old and they die, right? It was because of the sin of the world. It was because of the sin of mankind. God had given them specific instructions. God had given them specific ways of living their life in the garden, in the place where there's life, where there's no death, and they chose to sin. They chose to go against God's command and invite in their humankind death. The moment they were expelled from the garden, they died. Why? Because they were no longer protected by the presence of God. They were no longer protected in the garden where the presence of God dwelt, where life was. They were expelled from life and they went on to death. This is why life expectancy started to drop. This is why they no longer lived forever. The original purpose of God was to have life in the garden, was to have life there. But because they were expelled because of their sin, they now invited death into their lives, because the wages of sin is death. This is why it's so important for us to understand the context, the cultural context of the Bible. It's important for us to read and investigate, and not just read it with the eyes or with the mentality of our human selves right here, right now on this earth, right? The purpose of the garden was for there to be life and for you to dwell in the presence of God. But the moment they invited that sin, they were expelled. And the moment they were expelled, they went on to death. That's why God said, don't touch it, don't eat it, lest you die. And that's exactly what happened. Not only that, but they brought more curses upon themselves. Okay, let's go on to chapter 4. Now Adam knew, verse 1, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. And she said, I have given birth to a man with the help of Yahweh. Then she bore his brother Abel. And Abel became a keeper of the sheep, and Cain became a tiller of the ground. And in the course of time, Cain brought an offering from the fruit of the ground to Yahweh, and Abel also brought an offering from the choicest firstlings of his flock. And Yahweh looked with favor to Abel and to his offering, but to Cain and to his offering he did not look with favor. And Cain became angry, and his face fell. And Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? If you do well, will I not accept you? But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Then Cain said to his brother Abel, let us go into the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Again, God's going back to verse 7. If you do well, will not accept you. But if you do not well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. God is telling him, hey, do well, maintain yourself with me, maintain yourself in the faith, maintain yourself in the commandments. Because if you don't do well, if you don't maintain yourself at that, sin is crouching at the door. And it's a moment of time. It's just a matter of time before it catches you off guard, because before you go and take that sin and be part of your and make it part of your life. That's what he's telling him, because if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. Sin desires you. Sin desires you to completely eradicate God from your life. Just like how sin eradicated, or sin brought death onto Adam and Eve. Right? Because they didn't do well. What is it that they didn't do well? They didn't follow the instruction that God had given them. They didn't follow the Torah that God had given them. They didn't do well. Sin was crouching at the door. And the moment they didn't expect it, the serpent came in, attacked their minds, attacked their hearts, and they gave in. And then they died. They invited that death into their life. So sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it, God tells us. Now we see Cain and the desire of sin coming upon him, and he doesn't rule over it. And says, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then Yahweh said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Remember, the blood of somebody, the blood is the life. The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive the blood of your brother from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a wanderer and a fugitive on the earth. And Cain said to Yahweh, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Look, you have driven me out today from the face of the ground, and from your face I must hide. I will be a wanderer and a fugitive on the earth, and it will happen that whoever finds me will kill me. Then Yahweh said to him, therefore whoever kills Cain will be avenged sevenfold. Then Yahweh put a sign on Cain, and whoever found him would not kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of Yahweh, and he settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. Then, when he built a city, he named the city after his son Enoch. And to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael. And Mehujael fathered Methushel fathered Lamech. And Lamech took himself 2 wives. The name of the first was Ada, and the second was Zillah. And Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who live in the tents and those who have livestock. And the name of his brother was Jubal. He was the father of all who played string instruments and wind instruments. Then Zillah also gave birth to Tubal Cain, who forged all kinds of tools and bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to my voice. O wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech will be avenged 70 and 7 times. Then Adam knew his wife again, and she gave birth to his son, and called his name Seth, for she said, God has appointed to me another child in the place of Abel, because Cain killed him. And as for Seth, he also fathered a son, and he called his name Enosh. At the time he began to call on the name of Yahweh. Chapter 5. This is the record of the generations of Adam. When God created Adam, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female he created them, and he blessed them, and he called their name humankind when they were created. And when Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a child in his likeness, according to his image, and he called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years. And he fathered sons and daughters, and all the days of Adam which he lived were 930 years, and he died. When Seth had lived 150 years, he fathered Enosh. And after Seth had fathered Enosh, he lived 807 years, and fathered sons and daughters, and all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. When Enosh lived 90 years, he fathered Canaan. And after Enosh fathered Kenan, he lived 850 years and fathered sons and daughters, and all the days of Enosh were 950 years, and he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he fathered Mahalalel. And after Kenan fathered Mahalalel, he lived 840 years and fathered sons and daughters, and all the days of Kenan were 910 years, and he died. When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he fathered Jared. And after Mahalalel had fathered Jared, he lived 830 years and fathered sons and daughters. And all the days of Mahalalel were 890 years, and he died. When Jared had lived 162 years, he fathered Enoch. And after Jared had fathered Enoch, he lived 800 years and fathered sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah, and Enoch walked with God, and he fathered Methuselah 300 years, and fathered sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 65 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was no more, for God took him. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech. And after Methuselah had fathered Lamech, he lived 782 years and fathered sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, This one shall relieve us from our work, and from the hard labor of our hands, and from the ground which Yahweh had cursed. And after Lamech had fathered Noah, he lived 595 years, and he fathered sons and daughters. All the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. When Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So, the reason why there is so much lineage that we have to go through is for us to understand where everything comes from, where everybody's coming from, right? So we've gone through the entire lineage from the days of Adam, and we've arrived at the days of Noah, and now we see Noah has Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, so let's finish off this portion with the last 8 readings the last 8 verses of Bereshit, and we start off in chapter 6, verse 1, all the way through verse 8. Okay, so now we have Noah. Remember, we have Noah, and we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And it happened that when humankind began to multiply on the face of the ground, daughters were born to them. Then the sons of God saw the daughters of humankind, and they were beautiful, and they took for themselves wives from all they chose. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not abide with humankind forever, and that he is also flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were upon the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humankind, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty warriors that were from ancient times, men of renown. Verse 5. And Yahweh saw that the evil of humankind was great upon the earth, and every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was always only evil. And why was this? Because they did not conquer sin, just as Yahweh told Cain. Remember, sin is knocking at the door. Sin is the desire. It's there, and you shall rule over it. But because the people didn't do well, didn't follow the commands of God, is why their inclination of their thoughts and heart was only to evil. Right? Verse 6. And Yahweh regretted that he had made humankind on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And Yahweh said, verse 7. And Yahweh said, I will destroy humankind whom I created from upon the face of the earth, from humankind to animals, to creeping things, and to the birds of the heaven, for I regret that I have made them. Verse 8, but Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. That's where we end our portion reading for today. Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. And then we start seeing the rest of in the next couple chapters, the next couple verses that we're going to read next week. We start seeing the plan of God for Noah and for his descendants, on how he's going to reestablish the earth in humankind into somebody or into a people who are going to want to follow his commandments, right? So it's important for us to know where people came from, right? So now we see Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they're going to be important in the next couple chapters and in the formation of who we're going to eventually see Israel form. So this is where we end our portion study, right? But before we leave, I want to read this commentary that I have here regarding Bereshit. It says like this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In contrast to pagan beliefs that the Torah begins by revealing the fact that the universe has a beginning and that there is one who is above the universe and one who has set everything in motion. This knowledge causes people to avoid worshiping the created instead of the creator. Idolatry is basically to worship creation instead of the creator, as it is written in Romans 1, verse 20 through 25, which says, For since the creation of the world, Yahweh's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew Yahweh, they neither glorified him as Yahweh nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like the mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. The people chose to incline themselves to sin. They chose to incline themselves to the created rather than the creator, the one who had given them life, the one who was going to bless them, the one who was going to prosper them. But they chose sin, they chose death, and that's how they invited death into their lives. The fact that there is one who has begun everything and brought everything into existence teaches us that he is the owner of everything that exists, and he has the right to rule over everything that is his. This fact makes him the great lawmaker of the universe. If there is one who has begun everything that exists, both in heaven and on earth, then everything that exists must fulfill his purposes. This higher being started time, space, matter, vegetation, and the living creatures because he had a very specific purpose in mind. Remember, he exists outside of time and space. He is the God of the God of creation. He is the one who created everything. And remember, I said in the beginning of this portion, everything that he creates is for his glory, and everything that he creates is for a purpose. Okay. And let's see. Okay, that is the end of that portion that commentary that I wanted to read. That was very interesting. How it makes the connection of creation with the Creator, and as well as the connection of people worshiping or choosing to worship the creation rather than the Creator. How they worship man, they make images of man, they make images of animals. They rather choose to worship that than the Creator, God Himself. Okay. So that is the end of this portion study for today. Bereshit, in the beginning. We start off the Torah cycle in the beginning, in Bereshit, and we start off seeing how God has created the heavens, the earth, how He's the creator, how He is the giver of life, and how humans started to choose the sin, how humans, instead of living in the sacred space of God in the garden where God dwelt in the life, they decided to invite in their lives the desires of sin, the desires of death, and that's how death entered the world. That's how death entered the lives of humankind. But later we see, as we continue to read the Word of God, as we continue to read the Torah, as we continue to see and know Yeshua, we see that He is the salvation for humankind to go back to the beginning, to go back to the sacred space in the garden, and to get life back, to completely eradicate death, to completely eradicate sin, and bring back life into the lives of people. So I hope this was a blessing to you guys. I hope you guys continue to study. I hope you guys continue to seek out God. And remember, seek Him, follow His instructions, do well, and be blessed by God. Shabbat Shalom.